by consensus is considered one of the finest pieces of entire Hindu literature. And I'll just read out this one. And this is something which many people miss out completely. Padmavat is not only about the grand love of Ratan Sen and Padmavati, but also the third person in this love triangle, its poor victim, Nagmati. As indicated earlier, it is through her that we get a sense of a woman's plight in a patriarchal system, irrespective of her status. Unlike Padmavati, she does not carry an aura of divinity around her. She is a queen, but in Jayasi's articulation of her suffering, the Nagmati could be the woman next to her. That is how I have read. एक सवाल पैदा होता है कि भाई आपकी एक बीवी है और आपको एक चल दी है, उस बीवी का क्या हुआ, and how Jayasi reacted to that. So I do not know about Mr. Bhansali because I have not seen the film.
There is no need to.
But Jayasi has been very sensitive and has actually articulated the suffering of Nagmati in such a powerful way that if you were to choose 3 or 4 portions from the entire epic,
this would still figure there.
Inevitable. And as I have written in the concluding paragraph of this book, in the first place, we should know that Jayasi was unfortunately physically very ugly. He did not have eyesight in one eye. He was also hard of hearing in one ear, and also overall he had a deformed body. And he was conscious, painfully conscious of his bodily deformity. And as a matter of fact, he used his poetry as an antidote to that feeling. My concern is, and that is what I have written at the end of the book, are we really conscious of and bothered about the deformities of our soul? And do we have any aesthetic or ethical antidote to those deformities? Or are we already condemned to be a violent society, to be a fractured psyche and an imbecile intellect? So yes, I have been working on early modern literature. Hindi Kabir has been at the center of my explorations and research. But Jayasi cannot be far behind. I mean, as a matter of fact, if we go by the books, Padmavat is one of my all-time favorites. I have been enamored of Padmavat ever since I read it in my post-graduation, that is in 77, 78. And then I had the good fortune of teaching Padmavat to MA students in JM. And Sunil, I still remember the impact of my teaching Padmavat. The faces of those young women and men. I found it. I mean, we all were in tears, including the professor and all that. We all were in tears. Jayasi actually has written about himself. He has written, Muhammad कभी प्रेम का ना तन रखत न मांस, जेई देखा तेई हंसा, सुना तो आए आंस. The Muhammad poet is ugly and frail, and his appearance causes jeers and laughters and all that. But once you listen to his poetry, you cannot hold back your tears. And he's absolutely right. So, when this whole controversy started with the release, I mean, even before the release of this film, then I wrote a piece for India Today at the insistence of Rajesh Jha. It was published. Then Devdutt Patnaik insisted that you must write a whole book. And I realized that he has I remember his words, he said, Purushottamji, people should know about real Padma. That is why this book was written. So that people know that what exactly Jayasi's epic Padmavat is. Jayasi is such a poet that he chooses words extremely carefully. I mean, unlike, quite contrary to the popular perception, Jayasi and many other poets like him were great scholars also. The spontaneous knowledge of Hindu traditions, Hindu ways of life, Hindu mythology, Hindu sense of divinity is so deep and rich in Jayasi that it will put to shame many of the so-called self-appointed guardians of Hinduism. And he was a practicing Muslim, a very respected Sufi. In Tazkiraj, he has been described as the Muhaqiq-e-Hind, that is Indian searcher or researcher of truth. Jayasi was a great scholar. And today the situation has come, it's not a question of Hindi or English or Tamil or Bengali. We are losing the sense of language. We are simply forgetting that language is a layered structure. Every word is not just a word.
Or a literal.
It does not, the meaning does not adjust with the literal connotation. There is something called third meaning. There is something called hidden meaning. And as great Bhartrhari reminded us, in dictionary you find the definition of the word. The meaning lies in the sentence. Word has no meaning outside the sentence. It has only the definition. So with this rich tradition, I feel very pained that we are completely losing the sensitivity today. So you are absolutely right, Sunil. One of the major reasons for writing this book was also this, to sensitize people to the richness of Hindi language or Awadhi language and its whole tradition. We have not only foreignized all these things, we have replaced them, so to say, with a very, very crude and vulgar understanding.
And banal.
I mean, to give a related example, but not with this. And I recently tweeted about it, and I'm very happy that my tweet has been retweeted more than 1,000 times. I mean, every Tom, Dick, Harry is described as Chanakya. Every immoral politician has a right to call himself Chanakya. Chanakya, for God's sake, was a first-rate political philosopher. He reflected on the nature of state, just not about the everyday functioning of Raja and King. He talked about that also, of course, but his basic concern was about the nature of state. And in that sense, his work Arthashastra is a very important political treatise. But we have trivialized it to just political manipulations and cunning and all that. Similarly, Padmavat is not just about a war. War actually is a very minor part of Padmavat. The whole body of Padmavat, if you take, the war between Alauddin and Ratan Sen takes less than 1 third. It reports war with pain, with anguish. In fact, Jayasri makes the victor, that is Alauddin, reflect on the futility of desire. And it is Alauddin who says in Jayasri's Padmavat that desire never goes away unless a man reaches the grave. And this is desire which creates all the hell. Being a first-rate poet, Jayasri had a philosophical bent of mind. Otherwise, you can't be a poet. And then he also had a sense of the poignant moment. The defeated party reflecting on the futility of war means nothing. The victorious party reflecting on the futility of war and thinking that maybe this could have been avoided.
Almost like Ashoka and...
Exactly. It's almost like Yudhishthira at the end of Mahabharata. Bhartrhari. I have written in this, I have recalled Bhartrhari, that it is Bhartrhari who told us that Krishna na jirna vayameva jirna kalo na yato mayave yata. Time does not pass, we pass away. Desire never goes away, we go away. So Jayasri puts the whole thing at that sensitive, reflective place. Victor saying that, well, maybe this could have been avoided. In fact, he says that I wanted to avoid this. At that moment, not before and after that, but at that moment, Alauddin is not celebrating victory. Alauddin in history, of course, celebrated victory. His chroniclers celebrated victory. But Alauddin in Jayasri's Padmavat is not celebrating victory.
Including Amir Khusro?
Yes. Yes. Amir Khusro also. Because after all, he was a court chronicler. If you are with the court and if you are with the political power, then things change. Jayasri was respected by many things as we reconstruct his biography. But he was not dependent on anyone. So, just like Tulsidas and Kabir Das.
He was all totally extricated from that network of patronage and all that.
So Khusro was not.
Really.
So in spite of all his greatness, Jayasri reflects. Jayasri makes the victor reflect. That is Padmavat. And incidentally, Jayasri's Alauddin is of course a villain in the story, but he is not a monster. He is a human being. He is a king with good and bad points. He is cunning. He is negative. And the most important difference between him and Ratan Sen is that Ratan Sen determines the consent of Padmavati. And in spite of the provocation and advice from his courtiers and friends, refuses to use sword to get Padmavati. He says that in war there is no, in love there is no scope of violence. So whether either she and her father will accept me or I'll simply perish. No question of attacking me. On the other hand, Alauddin is least bothered about her concern. That is the difference.
That is the difference.
That is the difference, and that comes out quite clearly. Jayasee is very clear on that. And Jayasee's sympathies are obviously with Ratan Sen and Padmavati. See, there is a message, inherent message in Jayasee that you love a woman perfectly fine. Maybe she does not love you. Please accept that. You have no business to force your will on her or to quote unquote punish her for rejecting. That is one inherent subtext of Padmavati in Jayasee's epic. The point I was making that historical Alauddin, whatever he was, that's a different thing, but Jayasee's Alauddin, one, is a human being, is a negative person so far as the narrative of the epic is concerned, but still he is not a monster. And when he is introduced, when you come across Alauddin for the first time, you will read this in the book, he is shown reflecting on the vagaries of political power. That is
already a philosopher, in fact.
Already a kind of this thing. Not philosopher, but a man who is concerned that I am a king today, maybe not tomorrow. Realistic enough. Not philosopher, but realistic enough. And what he recalls here, he recalls Ravan. Jayasee's Alauddin recalls Ravan. That just as Ravan was careless, what happened? Lanka burned and everybody ended.
I love that line you quoted one of the older critics saying, there's
Vasudev Saran Agrawal.
mini
Vasudev
Ramayana.
Saran Agrawal. In Hindi, literally, he says कि पद्मावत से एक छोटी सी जायसी रामायण निकाली जा सकती. That's what I have translated. A little Jayasee Ramayana can be carved out of Padmavati. So many allusions and so many references, direct and indirect, to Ramayana, that you would think that the man is so deeply steeped in Ramakatha.
The sheer ease with which he's, taking metaphors left, right, and center. I mean, it's
From
it's
Islam,
not
from Hinduism, from folk life.
Jayasee's world, is not just one of tolerance. It's not just absence of hostility, as they're using it nowadays. It's a world of actually active sharing and almost commerce.
Acceptance.
Actually,
commerce, yes, acceptance. And
the metaphors are being traded almost.
In his work, Aakhri Kalam. Don't go by the name. Aakhri Kalam was actually his first work.
Okay.
So it's not his Aakhri Kalam. It refers to Islamic belief. Then on the day of final judgment, Paygambar would address the people and that would be the last address.
That's right.
So that is Aakhri Kalam. So Jayasee is a believing Muslim. But in that Aakhri Kalam he writes that there are as many ways to reach God as there are stars in the firmament. But so far as I am concerned, to me the best way is up.
Because he cannot not say it as a believer.
No. He's not secular. Or he's not an atheist. And he's not a strategist. But he's making a significant, extremely most significant statement. If you go strictly by the Islamic theology, Jayasee is making a very objectionable statement. To put it very bluntly. But Jayasee is making that statement and he was not accused of blasphemy. Nobody took any exception to this statement. Mind you, this is the strength of South Asian Islam.
Absolutely.
South Asian Islam is not exactly the Arabian Islam. Narad and Iblis,
Iblis,
Hatim and Karan.
Hatim and Karan and
when he praises
Allah is being called, addressed as Gosai. It's amazing. I mean, it's...
that's it. That's it. When...
So almost as if a currency equivalence has been found between the...
Bahist is Kavilas. Kavilas is actually a form of Kailash. For him, Kailash and Bahist are become the same thing. Hanuman. You see, Jayasee seems to have a fascination with Hanuman. In this particular book, in Padmavat, Hanuman plays a very crucial role. When Ratan Sen, out of frustration, decides to commit sati, Hanuman runs to Mahadev ji. and requests him that please save me because though I burnt Lanka, but I am burning because of his love. And if he lights his fire, whole universe will burn. So this motive has been used by Jai Singh. That Hanuman goes there and Mahadevji and Parvatiji come and they save Ratan Singh. So this is his rootedness. And yet again I would say, right at the beginning, he praises Allah, he praises his Prophet of Islam, he praises Khalifas, and in fact goes to the extent of saying that the universe was created by Allah for the happiness of Prophet. So he is a Pakka Muslim, but a South Asian Muslim. That is how I would describe. Also, the knowledge had the other dimension, that was the direct experience. So many things which Dayasi describes can be known only through observation. For example, this idea of good and bad omens. When Ratan Sen leaves for Singhal, somebody is coming with a pot of silver with curd. This is a great omen. A woman is coming from that side, it's a good omen. If she was coming from the other side, it would have been a bad omen. Apsagun Huta. So he is quite aware of all that. He is aware of sailor's tales. He alludes to sailor's tales.
Wow, that is
so. Yeah. He is quite aware of all that. And
from what Amethi and so says.
And if you read, when you read this book, you would realize, you would see his description of feast organized by Ratan Sen for Alauddin is considered a piece of itself in an entire Hindi literature. Some scholars have even feel irritated with it because the description of dishes and the way of their preparation runs into 70 steps.
The slight dichotomy also between a Bairagi on one side.
No, he's not a Bairagi. No, sorry. He, in his personal life, he's a Bairagi or whatever. But we must understand that he is a man who celebrates all good things in life. So this feast is described in such a great detail that it seems that he was not only a foodie but also a chef. But I have written in this book that maybe he was neither a foodie nor a chef. But he knew one fundamental thing which many people have forgotten. Poetry is not written just by personal experience. No great literature is written simply by personal experience. None of us has suffered massacre, fortunately. None of us has suffered famine and all that. But we can write with empathy and with gathered information and all. But again, this is something which all the scholars have missed. He describes the feast in detail, to some scholars even irritating and boring detail. 70-75 stanzas running feast description. The description of dishes. But at the end of all that description, he says, Jati parkar rasoi bakhani, tab bhi jab pani sosa. Pani mool parekho koi, pani bina sawad na hui. Amrit pani na amrit ana, pani so ghat rahe para. Pani doodh mein pani ghiyu, pani ghat ghat rahe na jeev. So on and so forth. I'll read English translation. All that is described here hitherto could come to existence only after getting a touch of water. If you examine carefully, all taste depends on water. There is no nectar but water. It holds the life in the body. Milk and ghee are but forms of water. If the body loses water, it also loses life. It is water that holds light. Rubies and pearls are found in water. Water is unblemished. Its touch takes any scum away. And yet with all these qualities, water flows down politely instead of nurturing highbrow haughtiness. Says Muhammad the poet, deep waters, not shallow ones, reach the ocean. Fulfilled vessels and people maintain equanimity while the empty ones make a lot of noise. That is how he finishes that. The whole description of the sage is put in such a deep, philosophically reflective perspective. I'm surprised actually that scholars have missed this. I have written in this book that we would be having a saner society if we listen to poets more carefully. This is how the introduction of the book starts. I would only say, Sunil, that we took too little of them. That was the mistake. We took too little of the taboo. And now we have reached a situation. This is such a peculiar situation that intellectual has been turned into a term of heavy use. And we are witnessing the expressions like intellectual terrorism. So, yes, to that extent you are right. But the binary part I do not have. So, yes, we should have had a lot of more time, a lot of more Premchand, a lot of more Subramanian Bharati or whosoever. Unfortunately, we did. And in fact, I would say, even today, the educated, the so-called educated, I have written in my Kabir book that poets like Tukaram, Kabir Das or Shankar Dev are not classic in the sense the term is used in West. Because these poets do not belong to a bygone era so far as the ordinary individual is concerned. They are very much contemporary.
Alive.
आपको ना कबीर मालूम है, ना तुलसी मालूम है, ना मीरा मालूम है, ना तुकाराम मालूम है, ना चंडीदास, जायसी का तो आपने नाम तक नहीं सुना. In Hindi also, I'll tell you, by the way,
Till one time it was very
late
rich.
19th century, huge translations from Bengali, Marathi, Tamil and all that. And I don't know of today, but those days the situation was that, for example, Anand Math is published and within 10 years it is available, within 5 years it is available in Hindi. So there was a huge translation industry in Hindi, and still it is.
And as you have pointed out, like, Jaisi within 100 years goes to Bengali.
Bengali, yes.
Quite
I have
amazing.
written here with a tongue-in-cheek remark that in this sense, the credit of taking the legend of Padmini to the Bengal goes to Jaisi. From Bengal in 19th century.
Huge adoption. I know.
All this Rajput
Complete Rajput banner.
So the credit goes to Jaisi. He says that, look, nothing survives. Alauddin is gone, Ratan Sen is gone, Hiraman is gone, even Padmini is gone. Only story survives. Kich nahi raha rahi kahani. That is how he concludes. So why I have written this? With the hope that when people will remember this story, maybe they will remember millions. With this ambition he has concluded. Similarly, I would say that whenever people think that yes, there is something which we have been missing in our own heritage, in our own legacy, there are reflections which are, in spite of their historical limitations and context, are relevant and pertinent today. And if this book is able to make its readers feel that not violence but equanimity, not aggression but dialogue, and not ugliness and falsehood but truth and beauty ought to be the epitome of life. If that message of Padmavat reaches people, I would consider myself more than satisfied and happy. With this intention, particularly keeping the younger generation, I have dedicated this book to my daughter and my son. And their generation.
Yeah.
So let us hope.
Yeah.